I'm a lean Kanban coach and trainer, and so one of the questions that I regularly get asked is the Scrum Kanban question. Now, I want to differentiate or take a little bit of a distance from a lot of the Scrum Kanban discussion in terms of discussions that really look like is McDonald's better than Burger King, right? If you're planning a business lunch, that's not what matters, right? So I want to take a broader perspective. Yeah. So in terms of taking that broader perspective, I want to look at three different perspectives. One is the perspective of organizing work. The other one is of delivering value, and then the third one is that of business fitness. So I'm taking a broader view. Yeah? So not just comparing the recipes, really looking at more of the fundamental things that underlie both Scrum and Kanban. So for doing that, I use some foundational work. One is Toyota Production System. And the reason why I'm looking at Toyota Production System as a help here, as a guidance, is because for many of the Scrum people, it is really part of the foundation of Scrum, right? And on the other hand, I'm using some of the recent insights in evolution in action, and essentially because evolutionary change is really something fundamental to Kanban. And so that's why I'm using those two as a guidance to reason about Scrum and Kanban. Yeah? And so the perspective that I want to take is, one perspective is the organization of knowledge work, the organization of work at the execution level, yeah? And specifically knowledge work in the definition of work that requires you to solve a hard problem with a diversity of problem solvers. Yeah? So in plain English, you need to solve a hard problem, and you have different people with different skills and perspectives to solve that problem, right? So now, solving problem in itself is not an added value. Yeah? It's only an added value if you deliver something to the customer, what the customer wants when the customer wants it. So that's the second perspective that I will take. It's the perspective of the value stream. Yeah? Now, again, I'm going to look at the value stream not in terms of like the typical image that people have of a value stream map, but something a little bit different. And then finally, solving a customer problem in itself is not sufficient. It's really about business fitness. It's about adapting to a changing environment, especially if that environment is changing rapidly. So those are the three components that I will look at. And at the end of the talk, I will try to explain that actually we need a framework to think about these three items, that organizations really need a framework to make sense at those three levels, yeah, to increase their business fitness. I'm going to use two archetypical cases. These are not real cases. These are archetypical cases in the sense that they are constructed, they're a construction of different cases taken together. Yeah? So the one is Digitatl-Innovations. It's a startup company. It is a co-located team. They're pretty successful in terms of creating a new product. It's driven by a co-located team that is closely working together. But as the product is becoming successful, it's becoming more feature-rich. They need to think about scaling, about growing, yeah, and about adding extra capabilities to their team. Yeah. So that's one case. The other archetypical case is Big-Utilities. Big-Utilities is an established player. They have an established business. But it's under economic pressure. They're undergoing a drastic change, and that drastic change is delivered by a number of programs in which IT is involved. Yeah, so two very different archetypical cases. So first part is looking inside the box. So we're going to look at work organization and value streams. Obviously I'm using the Blue Book by David as a reference for Kanban, and then the Scrum Guide as a reference for Scrum. So this would be one, so we start here from the side of Scrum in terms of core practices, and this would be like the typical type of comparison that you would find. So you look at the Scrum, the Kanban core practices, and you try to find some equivalent in Scrum. And that's actually not what I'm interested in. You can argue endlessly about the wordings on the slide here. Yeah? That's not what I'm really interested in. Yeah? What I'm really interested in is in the more fundamental differences. The more fundamental difference in terms of Kanban taking a perspective of limiting work in progress and managing the flow, and Scrum taking the perspective of doing things in iterations in time boxes with self-organizing teams. So those are really very different, very fundamental differences. And so to analyze that difference, I go back to Toyota Production System. And what I'm mainly interested in here is the insight that we can gain there in terms of, on the one hand, work organization. So work organization in terms of work cells and pull, yeah? And I'll explain that. And on the other hand, the insight in the notion of value stream, and not the typical notion of value stream in terms of a value stream map, but the notion of value stream in terms of what is the pacemaker in that value stream and what is the part supply in that value stream. And I'll explain that also. Okay, so in Toyota Production System 2, there's two ways of organizing the work. So one way of organizing the work is in work cells, typically U-shaped cells, yeah? Where the different processing steps are really close to each other, so that you can have multi-skilled workers that actually service multiple machines at the same time. Yeah? This is actually one of the resistance to change that Taichi Ohno needed to overcome because this was not at that time, because we're talking about last century here. Yeah? At that time, workers did not want to service multiple machines at the same time. So this was one of the resistance to change that Taichi Ohno had to overcome. Yeah. So in the work cell, so it's multi-skilled workers with a number of machines very close to each other. In that work cell, work flows continuously from one processing step to another processing step. So there's no mention of Kanban here. Yeah? It's the work automatically flows at the beat, the heartbeat of the customer demand. Yeah? So it goes from one processing step to the other because all processing steps are working at this same heartbeat. Yeah? So it's continuous flow. So that's one way of organizing work. And the other way of organizing work is what we probably are most familiar with is pull. Yeah? It is the customer process delivering only something when there's a demand for it. Yeah? So where the customer process triggers the production of the supply process by means of a pull signal, by means of a Kanban signal. Yeah? Kanban is the signal here. So Kanban can be the way to implement pull, or a con-whip system. Constraint whip system can be also an alternative. Okay, so those are the two ways of organizing work in TPS. Work cells, multi-skilled workers, and pull. Can you find an equivalent in knowledge work? I think you can already see the equivalents in knowledge work. So let's examine that a little bit. Yeah, let's examine that a little bit with this particular attention to the fact that knowledge work is different from manufacturing. Yeah, and so how is it different? How is it different? Well, in terms of how we define knowledge work, yeah, it is a hard problem, work that requires hard problems to be solved by a diversity of problem solvers. Yeah? So specifically, a hard problem meaning that there's no one individual that can find the optimal solution. Yeah? So you need different perspectives, different people need to work together. Yeah? But there's a diversity of problem solvers, meaning that different people have a different perspective that can each contribute to solving that problem. So if you're stuck in a suboptimal solution, yeah, there's always somebody that you can use to get you unstuck, that you can use to advance a next step. Huh? Okay, so that is, that's how we define knowledge work. And obviously in knowledge work, in the type of business that we're in, yeah, there's always a discovery aspect. Yeah? So there's always a component of discovery in our knowledge work. Okay? So discovery meaning, yeah, there's an aspect of making a hypothesis about our customers, about our customer needs, yeah? Delivering something, and then validate by delivering something a minimal viable product, yeah? By delivering something, validating those customer needs, and based on that validation, taking a next step, abandoning what you're doing, or continuing and reinforcing what you're doing. Yeah? So those are the two specific characteristics that we need to take into account. Okay, so doing that, we can look at the organization of work, organization of knowledge work, the organization of solving hard problems that requires different, diverse problem solvers. Yeah. So there's two settings that are important here. One is the structured task setting, the setting where there is a structure in the problems that we're solving. Yeah. It might require multi-skilled, no, it might require different workers with multiple skills, with different skills, but it does not necessarily require multi-skilled workers, right? So the problems that we see are problems that have a certain structure that we can capitalize on. Yeah? A good description of that is done by Edwin Hutchins, Cognition in the Wild, Distributed Cognition. He talks about, he really in detail describes the work, the problem-solving work of a navigation crew on a warship. Okay, the navigation crew of a warship, it has different roles. Yeah, there's the guy that handles the pylorus. Yeah, so it's the thing that you use to aim at a certain point to get a bearing. Yeah, there's the navigator. There's the plotter. So there's different roles, and it has a certain task structure. Every role has a certain contribution to make to solving the problem of knowing what position are we in at this point in time. Yeah. Now, obviously, with GPS, it all becomes a little bit simpler, but that's the way they used to do it. Yeah. And there's a fine description of that. And I'm pretty sure that in your own work, you see a lot of problem solving that require a structured task setting. Yeah. Obviously, the other way of organizing work, or the other setting, is a setting where the work is unstructured. The task setting is unstructured. Yeah. The mental image that you might have here, or that is a good mental image here, is if you the scene in the Apollo 13 movie where they need to fit a round tube on a square air filter. Yeah. How do you fit them together? They put all the material, it's under stress, so they put all the material together in one room, all the experts together, they get 1 hour, solve it. Yeah? Okay? So those are the two different task settings that we can identify. Remarkably, in the navigation crew study, the navigation crew is really a crew that is working as a crew when, for example, they are entering the port because they need a bearing, they need a position fix, they need a position fix every 30 seconds or so. So they're working very well structured, they're working very efficiently, yeah? But during the night, when they're in the middle of the ocean, do you think that they need a crew? yeah, they have one man, the navigator. Yeah? And the navigator is doing all the different jobs. Yeah? He's going to the steerboard, looking in the Polaris, going to the backboard, looking through the Polaris, taking the bearings, and doing a position fix all on his own. Yeah? So in that story, you see during times of stress and when they need efficiency, they're working in a structured task setting. During times of where they have lots of time, they're working in an unstructured task setting. On the one hand, they have multiple roles that contribute. On the other hand, you have a multi-skilled worker that is doing the work. Okay. So those are very different ways of organizing the work. Yeah. So obviously, in terms of translating this notion of work cell, yeah, we can have a cell in knowledge work also. Much like a Scrum team, it's a small self-directed unit of multi-skilled workers that swarm on work. Swarming meaning that they all team collaboratively solve a problem, or they all advance the work. So the team collaborates to get the work done. Yeah? Because we're talking about multi-skilled workers. Everybody can contribute. If the work is stuck somewhere, everybody can contribute to get the work unstuck. Yeah? Okay? So that's working as a cell. Yeah? I think, who's familiar with swarming? Yeah, you're all familiar with swarming, I guess. Huh? Yeah? Okay? So the pool counterpart is the counterpart of this notion of crews, just like our navigation crew that we just talked about. So rather than cells, we have crews, and crews are teams that, where the work flows, teams with specific roles, the work flows between the roles, yeah? Guided under explicit policies. Yeah? In our navigation crew example, they really have explicit policies in terms of who is doing what at what point in time. Yeah? Who is contributing what. Yeah? And then pool is the mechanism that we use to let the work flow between those different specific roles. Okay? So we've got crews on the one hand, cells on the other hand. Yeah. Okay, in terms of the knowledge discovery process, so again, let's look at the value stream concept in Toyota Production System. I talked about work cells and continuous flow. Yeah? And obviously, in the ideal world, you would like to have everything flow continuously. Yeah? During one of the talks yesterday, Jim Benson made like an off-the-cuff remark saying that, well, if all your work is flowing without problems, you don't need a Kanban. Yeah? Okay? Because all the work is flowing. Yeah? All the work is flowing. That's continuous flow. Yeah? And so ideally, you would like to have all the work flowing continuously from the raw material to the customer. Yeah? But in the practical world, in the real world, that does not happen. Yeah? In many cases, the upstream processes get disconnected from the downstream process. The upstream supply processes get disconnected from the process that actually delivers to the customer. Yeah? Because the upstream processes contains machines that are not fast enough, that are designed for batch work, that might not be reliable enough. Yeah? So this means that we need to have two ways of working. Yeah? One is a pull system, part supply. The other is a continuous flow, and we need to combine them together. Yeah? So because we know that not all the work can flow continuously, we make a distinction. We put a focus on a particular part of the process, which we call the pacemaker. Yeah? So the pacemaker is this U-shaped cell that delivers to the customer. So it's the place where the final product takes its shape, takes form. It's delivered to the customer. Yeah? It's responsible for delivering at the customer heartbeat, so at the demand rate. So it's responsible for delivering what the customer wants when the customer wants it. Yeah? And it has this special function. It's called the pacemaker because it sets the pace for all the upstream processes, right? So without the pacemaker, yeah, all the upstream processes will be working in a complete chaos, yeah, or with too much variability. So that's the function of the pacemaker, okay? And then the function of the upstream processes is to supply parts, yeah, to supply parts. And how do we supply parts? By a Kanban system, by pulling parts from letting the pacemaker pull these parts from the part supply. Okay. So how is this relevant again to our world, to our work? Okay. How is this relevant to our work? One point we need to make careful attention about is that unlike manufacturing, where most of the work is delivering in an existing value stream, yeah, in the work that we do, we have two parts. We have both exploiting an existing value stream as well as creating new value streams. So we have a broader perspective than manufacturing. Yeah. It's not only exploiting an existing value stream, it's also creating new value streams. It's not only doing all the stuff on an existing product, as well as creating new markets, new products. Yeah. So in terms of exploiting the existing value stream, so what matters there, it's the type of business fitness criteria that David talked about in his keynote talk. Yeah. In terms of exploiting an existing value stream, the criteria are lead time, are the lead time in line with the expectations of the customer? Are they predictable? Do you have the right quality? Is it conformant? Stuff like that. Coming back to our archetypical cases, yeah, Big-Utilities is very good at exploiting its existing value stream. Yeah, that's what they do day to day. Yeah. Creating a new value stream. So the other part of knowledge work, typical part of knowledge work, is acquiring new customers or new prospects, acquiring the attention, yeah? Activating those customers, yeah? Retaining them, yeah? Getting referral from them, and then ultimately getting revenue. Yeah? That is what Digitatl-Innovations has been doing for a while, creating a new value stream. Okay. In knowledge work, the role of the pacemaker cell, is actually to drive the knowledge discovery and the creation of new value streams. That's the role of the pacemaker cell. Okay? If you look at the essential functions of the pacemaker cell, assembling the final product, well, that means in our world, integrating, building, delivering, deploying the product to the customer. In terms of delivering what the customer wants when the customer wants it, well, we're creating a new value stream. So we don't know yet what the customer wants. So the function of the pacemaker is to actually find out. Yeah. So it's not about, the function of the pacemaker is not about delivering stuff, yeah, but it's about finding out what the customer problem is and solving that customer problem. Okay. And then in terms of creating level flow for the upstream processes, what would be our upstream processes? Our upstream processes would be teams that deliver features, Kanban teams, for example, that deliver features. Yeah? So it's about making sure that they decompose the work in a way that it is manageable, that it's decomposed in manageable pieces. Yeah? This might entail architectural development, spike development, all those kinds of things that you do to make sure that any later upstream teams have manageable pieces of work. Okay. In our case, Digitatl-Innovation, yeah. In the case Digitatl-Innovation, it has mainly been acting as a pacemaker. That's what Digitatl-Innovations has been doing. Yeah. Okay. Do we have a part supply in the work that we do? Or do we only have pacemakers? Yeah, obviously, we also have part supply. Yeah? Feature crews, maintenance crews, crews that do evaluative maintenance, corrective maintenance. Yeah? We also have part supply. Not every team in our organization needs to be a pacemaker. Yeah? Just like the fact that not every team in our organization needs to be a feature crew. Okay? So feature crew is the equivalent of part supply. So its function is to deliver features, change requests, fixes, whatever. It's a service team, just in time and pulled by the pacemaker. And so its function is to exploit an existing value stream. Yeah. Our pacemaker is evaluated in terms of the criteria of acquisition, activation, retention, revenue. Our feature crew is evaluated on the basis of criteria in terms of lead times, quality, conformance, and so on. Big-Utilities, in this case, has, in its IT environment, has functioning mainly as a feature crew, yeah, as they've been exploiting most of an existing value stream. Yeah. And so this is also the problem that we need to solve in many organizations, is that each of these organizations has its dominant thinking model. Yeah? Because Big-Utilities has been exploiting existing value stream, it mainly thinks in terms of crews. Yeah? Structured work, task settings, work flows from role to role. Yeah? So their dominant thinking model is a thinking model of crews, and if we're lucky, in terms of pull between those different roles. Because Digitatl-Innovations has been working very hard in terms of creating a new value stream, their dominant thinking model is one of cells. Yeah. Now, as on the one hand, digital innovation is growing, it needs to also acquire this capacity of thinking in terms of crews. And as Big-Utilities is going through a change, they also need to acquire the capacity to think in terms of cells. Yeah. So they need to broaden their repertoire of the way of organizing work. Yeah. They need to broaden their repertoire in terms of combining pacemaker cells with feature crews, making a band of pacemaker cells, whatever. Yeah? Any type of way of organizing the work that broadens their current dominant thinking model. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit in the second part of the talk. So in the second part of the talk, thinking about business fitness and adaptation to a changing environment. So our main reference here is recent insights in evolution. So starting again from our Scrum Kanban comparison, again, this is the type of comparison that you can find. So this time we start from the Scrum side in terms of roles, rituals, and artifacts, the typical way to describe Scrum. And again, I don't want to discuss the details about this. What mainly interests me here is, again, the main difference. Yeah? The main difference is in terms of roles. Scrum starts from a set of predefined roles, and Kanban starts from the roles that are already in your organization, yeah? Which is a fundamental different way of looking at things. And it's a symptom of the different way that Kanban and Scrum look at change. Yeah? Change, the foundational principles of Kanban talk about start with where you are now, and then agree to change in an evolutionary manner. The Scrum guide endnote, if you care to look it up, the endnote actually says that Scrum is an all or nothing approach. It is either you do it like it is in the book, or it's not Scrum. Yeah? So it's a completely different approach to change. Yeah? So again, we're going to analyze that. Yeah? And what we're going to use to analyze that is the work of two researchers, Peter and Mary Grant, There are actually very leading researchers in Darwin evolution theory. Yeah? While Darwin developed the evolution theory, Peter and Mary Grant actually are doing the effort to prove it in action. Yeah? So evolution in action. Yeah? So they spent like 25 of their career camping on a very inhabitable island, not very habitable, yeah, whatever. Yeah, a very friendly environment on an island, not a very unfriendly environment on an island in the middle of the Galapagos. Almost 25 years, every year they're spending half a year on that island camping, right? And so what their main interest is how and why species multiply. Why is there such a diversity of species? Yeah? Now, what our interest in their work is evolution. What they're actually studying is evolution in action, how species evolve on a day-to-day basis. Yeah? So that's our interest. So a big part of their study is the relationship between the characteristics of a species and the environment that the species is living in. Yeah? So you see two photos here. Their study of the species that they're studying is the Darwin's finches. Yeah? So the finches on the Galapagos Islands. And so you see two species here. The one species is the medium groundfinch. And what you notice immediately is it has a very deep beak. Yeah? The other one is the cactus finch. And what you notice is that it has a very fine beak. Yeah? Okay. Now, obviously, adaptation. Why is that big beak there? Deep beak there? It's an adaptation to the environment that the finch is in. In this case, the groundfish feeds on very hard seeds, hard and big seeds. Yeah? So it's adapted to the eco niche of very hard and big seeds. The cactus finch has a long and narrow beak because it feeds on the flowers of the cactus. So actually putting his beak into the flower to get pollen and nectar out of the cactus, just like a bee does. Yeah. So their study is about the relationship between characteristics of the finches and the environment that they're in. Now, a spectacular moment in their research was around 76, 77, where they saw a very rapid evolution of the beak size of these finches. Yeah. So the spectacular part about that is that we all think about evolution as a very slow process. Yeah. What they actually saw is a very rapid process. So what happened is, this is the beak depth over time. Yeah, the beak depth of the medium-beaked finch, the medium groundfinch, sorry. And so it's like very stable. And then around 77, yeah, the beak depth explodes very rapidly, becomes very rapidly, very much bigger. And what they saw was really selection pressure in action. Yeah? The selection pressure came from a very dry season, an extremely dry season. So 77 was an extremely dry season. And where the population of the finches was reduced drastically, I think it was reduced by 70% or something, yeah? Because the only food that could be found was these very hard cactus seeds, yeah? Very hard cactus seeds. So the only finches that were selected, yeah, were the finches with very broad beaks, okay? Now, you see that afterwards, it stabilizes again, right? Now, we all know this, right, in our own environment. It's called business fitness. Yeah? It's how well is your organization adapted to your current business environment. Yeah? If you're not adapted to your current business environment, meaning that you're not delivering well to your customers, you're not solving the hard problems, yeah? Then obviously you get selected away. Yeah? And the drought, yeah, when do you get selected away? During a dry season, during a season of big economic pressure, of course. Okay? Now this is the first, only the first part. The second part is that what they noticed is that evolution is not incremental. You think about evolution as an incremental process, right? We start with growing bigger beaks, and then we might start with growing stronger wings, and so on and so on, and in the end we get a stronger bird. Continuous improvement, right? Okay? That's not it, yeah? That's not it. So it is actually wobbling around. It's actually cycling, yeah? And the mechanisms around that is that, so this is the season that we talked about before that here, yeah, the dry season, where the big beaks are selected, yeah. And then suddenly in 1984, 85, I think, there was an El Nino, an extremely wet season, okay? So the population grew enormously, okay? After that El Nino, there was again a dry season. And unlike the previous dry season, what the grant saw was not an increase in beak size, was actually the reverse, a decrease in beak size. Yeah? Now that is very puzzling. Yeah? That is very puzzling. Why in the one dry season do you see an increase in beak size, and in the other dry season you see a drastic reduction in beak size? Yeah? So what happened is, it's actually the sequence of El Niños and droughts that actually makes the species cycle around. Yeah? So what happens is, during that very wet season, during the El Nino, all the cactuses that provided the very hard seeds, yeah, were overgrown. They were overgrown by vines. Yeah? So all the vines stapled on top of each other, and in the end, what happens is that all the cactuses died. Yeah? So in the dry season after the El Nino, there were no cactus seeds. There were only vine seeds, which are very small seeds. Okay? And then, obviously, because of the small seeds, it favors the small beaks. Okay? So what happens is you have a regime introduced by an El Nino in a dry season, where it has hard seeds, and then it turns it selects the big beaks. You have a new El Nino where the vines are growing. You have a drought, a dry season with again very small seeds, soft seeds, and a selection of very small beaks. Okay, so what you see is a gradual change, a gradual growth of the population, a drought, an abrupt change in terms of a selection pressure. It goes back into a renewal because of the El Nino. Things grow again, yeah? And we go back into a new cycle of change. Yeah? And so that's the pattern that they see. And this is the pattern they actually saw over the many decades that it's not that one particular instance, it's a pattern that they saw over the many decades that, where they followed the finches. Yeah? Now, in business, we also see that same pattern, right? Okay. Our business is growing. We have a gradual growth of our business, a gradual change. There's a dry season. There's a disruptor coming into our market, yeah? That puts a lot of selective pressure on us. We renew, and maybe we go into a new cycle, yeah? And so this is the challenge for our two archetypical cases. On the one hand, big utilities. Yeah? It has been growing. It has been going through that gradual change. Yeah? But it's now at a point where they're under extreme pressure, so they need to change. Yeah? They need to renew. And on the other hand, the back loop, the Digitatl-Innovations, has been creating a new value stream. It has been successful in discovering a new business, but it is in the process of going through the cycle of gradual change and running their business. growing their business. So the question of business fitness is not a question anymore of how well am I adapted to my current business environment. It really becomes a question of how well am I adapting to a changing business environment. Okay. This cycle, the adaptive cycle on the business level, we also see on the levels of work organization and value stream. Yeah. On the level of work organization, we see teams cycling between a mode where they operate as a cell. Everything is organized around a certain workflow, and then at a certain point in time, they might change their behavior into a crew. Yeah. Okay. This is, by the way, the challenge that many organizations are faced with at this point in time. They are working very well as a crew, yeah, and then they're coming under a time of stress, and they need to start working as a cell again. Yeah. So that's the type of challenge that they are facing with. Okay. Also on the value stream level, discovery and delivery are cycling. They are cycling, going through that cycle, cycling between delivery and discovery. Yeah? So the same applies there. Business fitness, in this case, especially when those cycles become more and more rapid, yeah? Business fitness means how well are these different cycles supporting each other. Yeah? And so that's the type of sense-making framework that organizations need to know the position where they are at the different levels. Yeah? Is the position I am in terms of our dominant way of working as a crew or a cell, and does that support the place where I'm in my business cycle? Yeah? Do these levels support each other, or are they working against each other? Yeah? So that's the type of sense-making that organizations need to do, looking at their own organization and finding out where they are at the different levels in the cycles. So we started with Scrum and Kanban, discussion about the question about Scrum and Kanban, but we took a deeper look. Yeah. We looked at organizing the work in terms of cells and crews. Yeah. We looked at the value stream in terms of the pacemaker cell and a feature crew, and how organizations need to broaden their, break out of their dominant thinking model and broaden their pattern of organizing work. Yeah. And then we looked at evolution in terms of business fitness, not just how well am I adapted to my current business environment, but how well am I adapting to a changing business environment. Yeah. And then in the end, for organization, what matters is how well all these different levels are aligned with each other. Yeah? And that is what business fitness is all about. How well do the cycles at different levels are supporting each other or working against each other. And that concludes my presentation. I think we still have 5 minutes.
I understand that one of the roles of the pacemaker cell is to level flow. So you have a Kanban team delivering features, obviously they want to deliver something to the customer. So I'm still trying to understand the role of the pacemaker cell and how this role impacts the composition of your project teams, for example. I understand one of the roles of the pacemaker cell is to make sure that we don't have the continuous flow of features, but that we bundle this such that we can deliver on demand when the customer really needs it, and he doesn't need a continuous flow of features. But I'm trying to, so I understand that role, but I don't understand what's the impact of that role on how existing project teams are configured.
Exactly. So pacemaker cell is typically a multifunctional team, multiple people with multiple skills working together to solve a customer problem. Yeah? So that's the essential function of the pacemaker cell. Yeah? So the pacemaker cell is that team that is working in creating a new product, a new value stream, in a new business environment that you want to go into, Or is that cell, that team, that is responsible for, if you have a, let's say that you have a big customer project, is responsible for solving the problem of that customer, So it would typically entail multiple roles, roles in terms of people that understand the customer problem, as well as people that know how to build and integrate the solution, as well as roles that know how to break the work down. And with breaking the work down, I mean actively develop your core architecture, not just on paper, but actually in code. So it's all those capacities together, high complex features. They're responsible for breaking it down, making sure that we can deliver those high complex features, that other people can contribute, the feature crews can contribute in low complexity features feeding into that. Does that make sense to you? Yeah.
Thank you.
I really like Shaw's three levels picture. I'm just wondering if, sorry, take the microphone. I really liked your three levels picture. And I was wondering if you've been thinking in that way long enough to know whether any one of those levels resonates more strongly with organisations than others. So there's strong correspondence between your levels and my Agendas for Change thing that I've started blogging about. So interested to know what your experience of that is.
Yeah. I can tell you what I feel most comfortable with. So for me, the part that resonates the most is the part on the value stream level. But it might be my bias.
That was the middle level, was it?
The middle level.
Yeah, same conclusion, yes.
Yeah, but it might be our bias in terms of the type of work that we've been doing in the past, right? I'm not a strategy consultant.
So my observation is that we've been talking in terms of continuous improvement, team level adoption, that kind of thing, which is great for those people already doing it, but isn't necessarily a message that resonates with organisations that need significant degrees of change.
Exactly. Yeah, agree. Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you.